All right, everybody. Thanks for attending this session. It's titled the OBS Super Bowl. Some of you guys may be wondering what that is. I've done a couple presentations in the past, even last Teams Fest that we had, and a couple user groups where I've done live events, taking your meetings to the next level, and kind of making how you can control your meetings and do some magical stuff. And I always bring up OBS, and I do slides, and I have to cover live events and meetings and a whole bunch of slides throughout the presentations because it's focused more solely on Teams itself. And I always leave myself like 10 minutes time to do demo and to show all the cool stuff that happens. And I always get a lot of questions, a lot of ooh-ahs during the demos. And this time around, I wanted to kind of do another session that I could just mostly do demos. This is going to be a very demo heavy presentation. I'm going to start out with some basics, how to get OBS, how to set it up. I'm going to go through all the settings, how everything looks, and then I'm going to start just covering different scenarios of how I've used OBS during Teams meetings and live events, or even doing other things such as recording webcast or, improving your meeting recordings inside of Teams and whatnot. And some of this stuff has come from the community of things people have asked, can Teams do this? As far as say, can you show a certain amount of people in your recording or keep it from switching to other people on the call during the recording? Because when you do a recording inside of Teams, it'll switch over to somebody else that's coughing or something on the active speaker thing, or it won't record the right screen. So you can kind of use OBS to do those recordings and have control over that and produce better recordings of your meetings if you need to publish those out to your organization and whatnot. And I'll kind of show you how you can do that as well. So agenda, what we got going on here today, we're going to kind of cover what is OBS, how we set it up. We're going to go over some basics and then kind of the scenarios I was just talking about. I'm going to show how I did the keynote last night for me, might be morning for many of you. Kind of go over how I did that inside of OBS through the live event. How you can use OBS for doing streaming to YouTube, your favorite Twitch, other services like that. How you can use OBS to do recordings. And then we're going to kind of go over how you can use OBS to control your meetings, control your content inside of Teams itself, and also how you can utilize that to do meeting recordings. And some of that involves NDI, which I'm going to touch on too. There was another session at Teams Fest as well, covering NDI in detail. So keep an eye out for that if you want in-depth information about that. So who am I? My name is Chris Webb. I'm an Office Apps and Services MVP. This is my second year now being able to stay in MVP, luckily. So got 20 years experience in IT and Microsoft technologies. Been a long ride. Started at the bottom as a help desk guy and moved my way up through systems engineering and now cloud solutions architect, doing all the Microsoft 365 stack for a company here in Dallas, Texas, where I'm from. There's some of my interests. I'm going to go over all that and how you can reach me out on social media. We'll start out with what is OBS. So OBS stands for Open Broadcast Software, and it's commonly referred to as OBS Studio. It's a free and open source cross-platform streaming and recording program. So what that means is it can take a bunch of inputs, cameras, images, videos, effects, just you name it. It pulls in a whole bunch of different sources, does things with them however you want, different scenes, different effects, everything, and then it sends it out to either a recording, or in this case, I'm using a virtual camera that's built into OBS.
Chris, just to interrupt you, you're looking very green and kind of duplicated. I'm not sure how to explain it. If you look in the chat, there's a screenshot.
Nice. All right, I'm gonna swap this up then if this ain't working that way. I don't know what's going on. I've done this 100 times and never had this problem before.
I mean, if you want to stop and start again, you know, I'm sure you've got time.
Yeah, I'll just do this. This will be easier. Let me include sound and screen 2.
Okay, that looks better.
All right, we good now?
Yeah, we can see what is OBS.
Right.
Looking better now, I think.
It's looking blurry. Quick. All right, we'll just stick for the with the slides for a second.
Okay.
That should look better. All right, sorry about that.
No worries.
All right, so anyway, so OBS, it's open source. You can have different clients. It works Mac, Linux, Windows. Best thing is it's free to download. There's no licensing fees. You can just download it and use it to produce and do a bunch of different things that you want. So to set it up, obviously you go to obsproject.com. I'm not going to go into the details on this, but you go to the website. There's a download link for it for whichever client you have. You click on it. It's pretty much a next install. There's nothing special to it. So once you have OBS, we're going to go through the basics. I'm going to kind of go out how's the laid out. It's made up of scenes, sources, scene collections. It's going to cover some scripts, and then kind of go through the settings of OBS. All right, hold on. Let's share my screen here on the other screen. It'll help. All right, so this is OBS. This is the first thing you do, and first thing you'll see when you open up OBS. You got a big preview window here in the middle. Down here on the left, you have your scenes. What scenes are is pretty much, think of it as like a PowerPoint slide. You got different slides. Then you have your content on each of those slides, which is all your sources. So every scene is made up of multiple sources. So here on the left, we got one scene. We have no sources in here right now, but what sources are is your webcam. It'll be an image, video, whatever you want to bring into your scene. So you can make multiple scenes to transition from one to the next. Audio mixer is any of the sources that you have. If they have audio, they'll show up here. Your desktop audio and your microphone will pull in here every time you add a source as well. You got scenes transitions. What this is pretty much when you go from scene to scene, what happens. You can just fade, you can change the duration, how slow that fade is. There's different options you can do here, swipe, whatever. Stingers are really cool because you can get videos that have like a transition effect from one slide to the next, and you can kind of jazz up how it goes from one screen to the next, or your content sharing or back and forth. Then over here on the right is all your controls. This is how you can start streaming once you, if you want to have this stream out to something else. There's a new button here in the latest version called virtual camera. This is what I was using here a second ago. What this does is it takes the OBS output, which goes into this preview window, and feeds it to a virtual camera, basically a webcam. And then you can take this webcam, you can put it into Teams or any other source that's pulling in your webcam, and have your OBS output go to that. You got start recording. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can use OBS for doing webcasts. You can do recordings. And cover that a little bit later. And then you got studio mode. I don't use this too often, but what this does is it kind of works like live events. If you ever use live events, you can switch a scene, you can preview what it looks like, and then you can send it to the actual output on the right. And you can control your transitions and go back and forth with that. Then we have our settings, which I'll go to in a little bit more detail here in a second. Up here at the top, this one's kind of important. So we have this scene collection menu. Down here at the bottom, you can have different scene collections. So this way you can have kind of like a pre-saved set of scenes. So like when we get to the keynote part, I got the Teams Fest 2020, which is the keynote one. When I load that, it'll load all the sources in here and kind of show how I did that. But you can save different preset scenes so you can come back to them later without having to redo them every single time. Under tools, there's some different tools you can use here. This is where scripts is, and I'll get into details at the keynote how you can use that. If you install the NDI tools, you get an output, so you can actually take NDI from your OBS and send that to another computer that has NDI that you're pulling in the source from your OBS for some reason. I've got a remote control. I'll go over that in a little bit. That on there. So for setting wise, just go through this real quick. General, I'm not going to cover too much. That's just like, what do you want to show over the top of other windows and just some general settings. The stream setting, this is how you can set up your stream. So if you have a YouTube account, it's really easy. You can just come in here. There's different services already set up. So you can do Facebook, the main ones, Twitch, YouTube. Pick YouTube, say primary YouTube, and say get stream key, and this is going to actually open up your YouTube account, take you right to where you can stream. There'll be a copy your key down at the bottom. I'll probably just go ahead and open this real quick. Oh, no. So you load it up, you get your studio. You can kind of set up your settings, and down here is the key. So you can just hit copy key, and you can go back into OBS. You can paste that stream key here, and then hit OK. And once you do that, when you go to hit start streaming, it's going to take all your OBS output, start your live stream in YouTube, and you're going to be on live. Pretty quick and easy. It's output, this is where you kind of set up your streaming, your bit rate, your encoder. I'm not going to go real into detail on here, but this is where you can, most of the default settings are pretty good. If you have an NVIDIA card or something, you want to change this to hardware, that way you get better performance. Doesn't eat up your CPU as much. I mean, set up your recording path where all your videos save when you hit the recording button. You can change the quality as well in the format. Audio is self-explanatory. You can set up your global audio devices as far as which devices to use for your sources, for your desktop audio and your mics. Video, you can have base canvas resolution. So if you want to downscale, that's kind of what the previewer is. And then your output, you can scale that. So if you have less bandwidth or the service you want, you don't want to eat up all your bandwidth to send it out, you can downscale it from 1080p to 720p by simply dropping this down and setting that setting. Hotkeys, I don't personally use these. I use what's called a Stream Deck, and I'll kind of show that here in a few minutes. I'll just go ahead and show it now. So Elgato makes a Stream Deck, and I'm sure you've probably seen this around on YouTube or on Twitter, some people buying these. It comes in real handy if you use OBS or even just for muting your mic or just doing generic things. I got mine set up that it does like speed tests and stock trackers, and it has a bunch of little LCD shortcut keys on it. But you can really use this in OBS to change your scenes. And I got one right now set up where I can switch between my cam, my screen plus my camera on top of that, and then like a pre-slide. But you can set this up, and I can't show the device now, but it's just got little buttons I can reach down here and change my scenes all right here with my Stream Deck. I have my CPU usage. And here's some of the other ones I was talking about that I have. And you have folders that go in between that. So it comes in real handy. But if you don't have one of those, you can use hotkeys. So you can go through and find different scenes that you want. And you can set up different hotkeys on your shortcut. If you have like a keyboard with a bunch of what are they called, macro keys along the side, you can set those up to switch your scenes and whatnot. The only downside is you got to label them or know which button is which scene, so you got to memorize. And advanced, I'm not going to go too much into this, but you can change your process priority. I usually put this above normal. This way, your priority goes to your stream. That way you don't have any drop frames or anything going on there. All right, I'm gonna close this so we can just stay on this one screen. All right, so move on into the real life scenario. So we're going to go in kind of the keynote, how I did the keynote today using OBS. We also use Teams live events for this to do the keynote earlier. So pretty much the kind of the keys here, we use scenes to follow a timeline. So we set a timeline up, basically different points in time that we were going to switch scenes. I projected to a second monitor. So it's really good to have dual monitors sometimes when you're doing producing, so you can kind of have OBS on one screen. You don't have to. You obviously could use the Screen Deck to do it, but if you don't have the Stream Deck, if you have dual monitors, that works great too, because on one screen you can have OBS, and then on the other you can have your output. So what I did was take the OBS output to a full screen on my second monitor, and then inside of live events, I shared my audio and I shared the second screen. Can't show sharing without closing my sharing down here. But when you go to click sharing in live events or Teams, you got a tick box for share your audio, and you pick the whole screen. So since you're projecting OBS to a second screen, and how you do that, you can right click your preview here, full screen project, and then my monitor too. When I click that, it sends all my OBS output to my secondary monitor. And then inside a Teams or live event, I share that monitor, and now it's going to take my OBS output and send it and share it into the live event or meeting. You can do this in Teams meeting too. It's a great trick, so you can do all your OBS stuff right into the meeting. All right, so I'm going to use the scene collection that we talked about earlier. I'm going to go back into Teams Fest 2020 right here. Go to startup, and there's probably some music here. I got it turned off. This is a good point. So got a startup scene here. This was just kind of the pre-startup. Comes up, we have a countdown timer. I'm going to show how you can do that. 30 minutes before this started, we kicked this off. So down here in the bottom, I have my audio sources. So I have some background music here. And anytime you add a source, so I added 2 medias. So I have my startup scene, and I went in and added a media source. Show you how you do that. You just create new. You can name it. So I name it test just to show, and hit enter, and then it comes up, and you can just say browse. So you can go browse to a video, an audio file, whatever, and it'll come up in here. So you can loop it if it's a loopable video that you want to keep looping. You can use hardware acceleration, and then you hit OK. Then once you do that, you'll start getting these audio mixers over here. So the video I used that's playing here is the foreground animation. It has some audio, but I mute that. So I don't want to play the music from that. But the background music I have hidden. So this works just like layers, like in Photoshop. So your bottom layer is going to be your background, to the top is going to be your foreground layers. So I have the long background music in the background, so it's a longer 30-minute long clip, so I can have music play the entire time. So down here you'll see background music, and I also have this muted as well. If I mute it, you notice it's still not playing. I got it turned down. And turn this up, and now you can start hearing the music come in. So I had this ready to go, the music ready. And when I started this up and I sent it to live events, it was already playing, the music was going. Sometimes when you add the media, if you notice, you can't hear it, but you see the lines and you're like, why can't I hear this music? You need to make sure you right click on this and go to advanced properties. And this is where you can have audio monitoring. So you just got to make sure you turn on monitoring and output if you want to hear it in your headphones and send it out. So in this case, I'm sharing my desktop audio. I wanted to have it monitor because that's what Teams is picking up, is my desktop audio. So I turn that on to make sure that it goes out. If you're streaming and whatnot, you could play music and not hear it in your headphones, but still send it. But you can only do that like if you're sending out the signal to a stream or a recording. So the countdown timer. So what this is just the text input. So I'll double click. So I would go to add, go to text, and then I put in a bunch of zeros, just as a placeholder to see what it looks like, just like a time clock like this. And then I saved it. And then what you do is go to scripts up here. So there's some built-in scripts into OBS, and this is a fairly new thing I found out. So when you click add, it has like a handful of scripts that you can use. Countdown happens to be one of those. So you can click on countdown. It loads up into here, and then you have some options. So you can put the duration. I put 30 minutes because we started this 30 minutes beforehand. You put the source, so countdown text that I did, and it'll attach it to the text. And then when it hits 0, then it puts that text in as soon as it hits 0. So that easy. You hit close, and then that starts at 30 minutes when you start your scene. So right after this started, we got the live event going, sound working, then I had the Teams Fest home. So click on this, I had another timer, had, begins shortly with the session, whatnot. So you switch the scenes, this is going, sitting there, countdown timer going. Same stuff, you can use sources that you've already used, you just do existing. So if I do add media, I can do existing. So I use the foreground and background music from the previous slide. So I could have the music going. I didn't really need the foreground in here, but I got it anyway. That way you don't have to keep adding sources. You can just pull the ones that you've already used. And then I have an image media source, or it's just an image source actually, that has the slide that we wanted, and then the countdown timer on top. So then following this, when the countdown hits 0, I have a transition on Teeper's slide.
Hi.
That if I right click on this, I can override it. I have fade, so I had a 1000 milliseconds. So it kind of slowly fades into Jeff Teeper's video for the keynote. It's just a media source straight to his video, and that's literally all it is. So as soon as you click on it, you notice it started to play, and then there was audio. It again because I stopped it, but it plays. I had the same thing with the audio, Teeper's keynote. I have that turned on, and also if I go to advanced, you can see Teeper keynote. I have it monitor on the output. That way it plays to the live event. And then once that hit 0, we were ready to go. Then I went on to the about the day slide. This is just a placeholder to allow Chris Horde to switch to his about the day slide and then continue on with the voice part of keynote. And then I have another slide at the end for end of session. So this goes to the, hey, what are the first sessions of the day? Has the background music playing as well. See, I got a in the keynote image, and then the long background I reused again. So once this came up, it started playing again. That's how I used it for a keynote this morning. Pretty straightforward. Like I said, it's just scenes, different sources. Think of it as PowerPoint. You got your slide, you got your startup, next slide, and it has all your content ready to go in there. And then it goes out. Like I said, the trick for this when you're using it with Teams and live events is use a second monitor, project that to that second monitor, share that content of the second monitor with your audio. Don't forget the audio. That's how you can do that. All right, so for streaming, so say you want to, like we were talking about earlier, you want to take OBS, you can do the same thing like we did with Keynote, pull in all your sources. Probably want to do some cameras and whatnot, which I'll show how to do that here in a second. Sit and do a live webinar. So you want to do a webinar on YouTube, and you can use streaming in OBS to do that. You can just go straight to YouTube. So I also recommend doing a second monitor for this. It's just easier to see what's going on. You can control OBS on the second monitor or vice versa. Put your content on that second monitor. But you don't have to do the projection output. You can just take what OBS has, all your scenes, all your content, and then send that straight to YouTube. So you can skip that step. Also, it doesn't require Teams, obviously, unless you want to stream multiple users from a meeting or call with NDI. You could have a meeting going in conjunction with the stream, pull the NDI, which is, if you don't know what NDI is, it's basically taking web cameras from everybody, turning it into an NDI stream, which is basically like a network video and audio feed, and then pulling it in as a source to OBS or other compatible NDI tools. So you can take every individual web camera feed that you want, build a scene inside of OBS, and then stream that out to YouTube or Twitch or any other platform. I've kind of covered how to set up that key. Everything else is the same as like in the Keynote. Set up your scenes, set up your sources, your audio, and then once you're ready, you just hit start streaming. Anything that's showing inside of this preview here is going to be what's going out to your streaming service. All right, for recordings, pretty much going to be the same thing as streaming, but you can use this, and it comes in handy for doing webinars, webcasts, things that you want to record and then upload later to YouTube, or maybe even do some editing. Some of the advantages of doing recordings in OBS is kind of bypassing some editing time, because a lot of times you're going to, have a slide, or you want to put yourself over top of your background as you're presenting. Just kind of adding effects or just transitions inside the video without having to have multiple cameras going and then post-process those in editing later. You can just do it all on OBS and record it straight from within OBS, and you can record your screen, record just anything as a source. So I'm going to go ahead and go to a new one here. And here I am. Hello. So I set up a couple scenes here, and say you want to do a recording and you have you want to start out just talking with yourself. So you would get everything set up, ready to go, and then you would switch to the beginning slot or what you want to start out on. And then over here, just click start recording. And this is going to create a video file. It's going to start recording. You can do whatever you need to do. That's why I recommend having a second monitor, because if you're displaying your monitor during your event, you don't want OBS showing up in the background. So usually you would have OBS in the off monitor to control your scenes, or using your Stream Deck to do that while you display. And then you can have different stuff. So you can have your screen only, which is right now I'm doing screen 2, which is my side monitor over here with the presentation, or I can do screen with cam. So I got a green screen back here, obviously, that's needs a little bit better lighting. Got bad lighting here, that's why it kind of looks sketchy at the bottom. But this way you can impose yourself over your content that you're showing. So if I wanted to do desktop or whatnot, I can do that. So let's see, I can pull this right screen. You can see it's in the background here with PowerPoint. So anything you're doing, you can control, you can, point up, do whatever you need to do while you're doing your recording. So comes in handy. Switch scenes, like I said, bring in audio, do whatever you need to do to produce a good recording right there on your computer free of charge. Don't have to pay anything for OBS. So easy way to do screen sharing, screen recordings. All right, so take control of your meetings. So what I mean by this is inside of Teams, and I've done this a whole bunch of times, whatever reason it's not working right now, but well, you can do it just like this for sharing screen. So I could be sharing my second screen like I was just showing a second ago instead of this main screen because I'm doing it for demo purposes, but you can have your OBS output to your second screen, similar to like you do the keynote, and then I can do all the switching. So I'm actually going to do that. So when you're in your meeting and you want to control the content better, you can do a share screen, share your second screen if you have a dual monitor. You could use the virtual cam option unless you want to look like Hulk smash like I did earlier, apparently. But the virtual camera works great too. You could do the new spotlight feature, which I was trying to do originally. You spotlight yourself, which takes your virtual cam right here, and you set virtual cam in Teams, and then it uh-oh, I'm not sharing this again. Really hard to do this at the same time when you're trying to present OBS, showing OBS. So anyway, on the right side, you got the virtual cam. So I got that started. That allows a virtual cam inside of Teams, which I'm going to bring up here. You can go to device settings, and I got OBS virtual cam. So what this usually does is it'll take your output of OBS, like I was showing in your preview window, and put it to your webcam inside of Teams. So when you do that, then you can use the new spotlight feature. You come to the participants and click on yourself, you can click spotlight. And when you're not sharing content, this full screens for everybody. It's a new feature that just rolled out actually, so you can make your screen the full screen for all the participants of your meeting. And then when you do that, now you can, take OBS, anything in your preview window is now showing as a full screen option to everybody in the meeting. The downfall with this method is it doesn't take audio across. So as long as you got visuals, it's a great solution. I would just use the virtual camera just to output to my spotlighted video feed. Your microphone comes across, but I mean, if you need to pull in videos with audio, it doesn't, because it's just a webcam feed only, it doesn't take that audio source across. So in that case, you want to use the second monitor, share your second monitor with the audio sharing, and now you get this. You get the same thing. It's just the reason you would use a webcam over the screen share is you get a higher frame rate when you're using a web camera. For whatever reason, you get more bit rate, more frames, whatnot, when you're on a webcam feed versus screen sharing. For whatever reason, I guess it's higher resolution and it's just polling rate. I don't know what the difference is, but get a little bit better quality frame rate when you use the camera method versus sharing a second screen. So like I was showing, you can overlay yourself, add countdown timers to your meeting, similar to like I did in the keynote. So you're doing that to a second monitor. You don't have music or videos, you can do it to the virtual camera. Like I said, have the countdown timer going. And, you have all that same control inside a Teams meeting. So you can do that content, take it to the next level, not have to just do standard screen sharing or have Teams control your meeting. You can control your meeting. You can control your content. You can control how it looks by using it. I got a note here on these slides if you want to download them later about how virtual cam can't use audio. All right, I got about 5 minutes, I guess, to cram this in. So using OBS and Teams NDI to enhance Teams meeting recordings. So I've seen this on the tech community a few times, like I was talking about earlier, when the recordings, it's hit or miss. You don't know what it's going to record, when it's going to record, who it's going to record when you're doing a Teams meeting. So say you're doing a meeting between maybe execs, and you want to show a few of those execs because you know they're going to be talking most of the time, and you want their content, but you want a recording. So you can come in, and instead of using the Teams recording, you can obviously you got to have the resource to do it, but you can sit down and you can use OBS to do the recording and for Teams. And this is where you can utilize NDI to pull in all your speakers that you want to show and content into OBS and then do the recording. Because this way you can control how the recording looks inside of OBS, and then you can publish it later to wherever you need to do it. So got this just background animation going. I need to turn NDI on inside of Teams. So I'm going to come over here and go to settings. Worked earlier when I tested it during the meeting. So I'm turning on NDI. If you want to turn on your cameras, then you can. I can show this. So over here on the media source, I can hit add, and you got to download and install a NewTek NDI. If you do just a quick search, I'll add this to the slides. OBS NDI. Right here, it's obsproject.com NDI. So you download this and install this. It's just a quick, next install. This will add support for NDI to OBS. And once you do that, then when I click plus for a source, you have this NDI source. So when I click add, I'm going to say camera 1, and I have this source names here. So you can see right now I got active speaker. It's the only one I have, and local, which is me. I'm just going to do local for now. That turned this back to me for video. Here we go. I'm gonna hit OK. And now you have me here. And this is pulling from Teams. If somebody else had their camera on, I could do the same thing. Just hit new NDI source. And that anybody with their cameras on would show up in this list. So I could take any participant in the meeting that has their cameras on, add that as a NDI source, and then place them on the scene wherever I want. So I can have an animated background, I could have a news desk, I could have just squares, whatever you want to do background wise. Bring in NDI, your feeds from Teams into here. And set it up how you want. And then you can have another scene with just the content only. So I can have this, I can pull in NDI, and usually the content is the active speaker. So I could say active speaker. Oh, David turned his on. But the active speaker, it doesn't show for me because I'm running this on my machine. Usually I say if you're gonna also produce and be part of the meeting, I suggest joining via Webb as a anonymous user with your name in, so you get the NDI feed for yourself. Otherwise, you got to use a local camera and the sound doesn't sync up right. So that's just the tip there. I'd cover it if I had a little more time. But if I were to share content that wasn't mine, it would show up here in the active speaker. So then you can switch back and forth. So now once you have all your speakers set up and you're ready to go for the meeting, then you can hit start recording. You do the meeting, everybody that you want is showing up. If you want to switch to the content only, you can have this in full screen. You can just adjust, the size. You just have a full screen of the content. You can kind of do like a cool trick. I'll cover real quick. So inside of Teams, you have your background blur effects. So this is kind of cool. So you can green screen everybody without having a green screen. So I can come here and go to apply background effects, and you can add new as long as you got that policy on, but you can upload a custom one. I got just a green background that I found online that I put in for myself. So you can have all your attendees download this background and use the Azure background effects with the green screen, pull it in the OBS, which I got here showing up for active speaker now. And then I can come in here, right click this camera and say filter. And under filters, this is how you do green screen in OBS. You do plus and then chroma key. Now I got a background effect here. So you can do this for all your speakers without having a real green screen, even though I have one back here, but that was using the Azure because you can see it kind of processing. You can have all your different speakers have that green background effect, and then now you can green screen them all on whatever background you want, and everybody can be green screen. So I think that's kind of a cool little trick. So you shrink yourself down. So you got everybody just sitting here at the bottom talking with some kind of background that you want, your company background, your content. You have 3 people sitting here talking over desktop background content that you're sharing, videos, whatever. So I think it's kind of a neat little trick. And then you can record it and you can publish it out. You can have some cool stuff there. Or you can stream it too. You can do the same thing with this and then stream it out to YouTube or any other services that you want. Pull your NDI in for the meeting and then publish that out. That's how you can do like a town hall meeting or a what they call it, where you have multiple speakers. I don't know. It's a big ask, so you can have different speakers and then broadcast that out to YouTube, so you can have a couple speakers talking. All right, the bonus content I hit on with the green screen without the green screens. A couple links here that'll be in the slides. YouTube DL, I didn't get to this, but it's a great tool. It's basically a command line prompt that you can just go download. It's called youtube-dl.exe, and then you feed it a YouTube URL. That's where you can get these cool little backgrounds that I use. You can go to YouTube, find some free looping backgrounds. Take the URL from that, use youtube-dl.exe and put it in there, and it'll download this video and you can use it for a background. So there's a lot of free content out there on YouTube with looping videos that you can use for your OBS stuff like this. All right, and that kind of wraps it up. Here's the session. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit of something in here. I know it was didn't go as planned early on. I expected to, I don't know what's up with the Hulk screen thing. I got to look into that. Never had that happen before, of course. But hopefully you learned some stuff, how to, use some basic OBS stuff with scenes, the sources, and kind of the scenarios, maybe give you some ideas how you can use OBS. You don't have to do any of this advanced stuff. I started using OBS just doing the recordings. The recording is a great start. Doing screen recordings and adding a little bit to your any kind of trainings you want to do. But if you don't mind doing the feedback for me, that'd be great. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of the day. Stick around for QA after this for 5 minutes in chat, and I can go over to the lounge too if we need to continue on that. But again, thanks a lot and enjoy the rest of your day.